Welcome back into the Rowdy Studio. I'm Stephen Levine. This is Tom Vandervoort talking a little Darlington.
Don't say that so dismissively.
It's Tom Vandervoort. We're talking a little Darlington, the track too tough to tame, but it was tamed by Jimmie Johnson, and now you think everybody else should be worried.
They should be worried about Jimmie Johnson.
You're overreacting to one race.
Listen, one race says a lot. It says Jeff Gordon's season kaput.
Oh, you know what's funny about Jeff Gordon? Mark Martin, who's only run 8 of the 11 races, is ranked higher than Jeff Gordon.
Well, you know why? Because when you have finishes that bad, it's kind of like you didn't race.
I agree with you. Jeff Gordon's season.
All right, and we know that Jimmie Johnson and Tony Stewart are going to be duking it out for the title this year. We know all that based on Darlington.
I thought you were a Greg Biffle fan.
I like the Biff. Don't get me wrong.
Look,
but
you're the one who's always cautioning people not to overreact to a single race. Yet here you are doing it. I don't think Jimmie Johnson has stood up and said, "I am the de facto champion." I still think Greg Biffle is in control.
Oh, he is.
He's still atop the point standings. I still think Denny Hamlin is going to have something to say about the championship. Hell, maybe even Martin Truex Jr. will have something to say about the championship.
Well, look, I will say this, and you're saying that, right? I agree. This is not disaster for Greg Biffle. It wasn't the finish he was looking for. Had a good run for 2/3 of that race. I think the Biff is fine. I just think Jimmie Johnson and Tony Stewart are looking very good at this point in the season when it comes to a championship run. Obviously, you factor in their pedigree. Tony Stewart, the defending champ. Jimmie Johnson, the guy who won the 5 before that. So you look at those things.
They've won the past 7.
Yeah, together. That's right, because Tony won the one before Jimmie started his run.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those guys, to say those guys are going to be duking it out for the title, I'm not just basing it on this one race. What I'm saying is this is certainly validation of the competitiveness of those drivers and those teams. Yes, I think this is validation for Martin Truex Jr. He looked for a time like he might be a guy to win this race. And I think Matt Kenseth looked very good. Denny Hamlin didn't have the car he had here last year, and he looked fantastic. I think he did a lot with a little. So I think all those things are true, and I base it all on this race.
And I think Tony Stewart, the fact that he finished 3rd without a clutch, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, he was clutch without a clutch.
He was clutch without a clutch. All right, issue number 2 was going to be Jeff Gordon, but we already kind of mentioned him. I mean, his season is done, where Casey Kane...
Not if he wins a couple races.
He could, but has he looked in any way, shape, or form like he's capable of winning a couple of races?
Here's the only saving grace for Jeff Gordon. That finish was completely attributable to this weird tire issue.
But he's having weird issues every race.
And he's having weird issues every race, which is why... Go ahead with your joke.
I wasn't going to make a joke. What joke do you think I was going to make?
I thought you were going to, he's got it, and you were going to throw in some clever phrase.
No, he has karmic retribution. That's what's going on.
For what?
Well, I don't know about that. Jeff is going to have to look into his own soul to determine that.
Here's what I'm fixing to say about Jeff Gordon.
You're fixing to?
I am fixing to say this. If you look at the list, and they did a very good job on the broadcast of showing the list of troubles he's had this year, engine troubles, tire troubles, bad pit stops, and things like that. If you look at that, you're tempted to say, we're not sure, but maybe this car has some speed. We just haven't given ourselves much of a chance to show it. In that case, you come out, you get on a 5 or 6 race run, you win a race or 2, and you put yourself in the wild card mix. So I don't think all is lost for him. I just don't see him making the top 10.
But what happens when you get behind the 8 ball like he is you have the tendency to start to push, to start to reach, to try to start doing things you wouldn't normally do otherwise, whether it be on the driver or on the crew chief, and it just spirals and it's got this snowball effect. So that is, I think, the danger and why...
But this is Jeff Gordon we're talking about.
And Alan Gustafson.
And Jeff Gordon is cool as a cucumber, and Alan Gustafson is as cool as the other side of the pillow. So I think we're fine. I think we're good.
Okay, what are you auditioning for SportsCenter?
Banana, banana.
With your strained metaphors.
Yeah.
All right, now thanks to our friends from Peak, it is time once again for us to name the Peak Performer of the Race. All right, you went first last week with the Peak Performer of the Race, so shall I go first this week?
If you'd like.
All right, my Peak Performer of the Race is not the guy who won, it's the guy who came in 3rd, Tony Stewart. The reason being, he had a clutch problem, he had a broken clutch. Steve Addington knew that it was going to be a problem if they had to pit again, so they took a long pit stop, they filled the car up with fuel, packed it in there, and then Tony not only had to drive without a clutch, but he had to start like back at 16th, save fuel, and still manage to come home 3rd. That's impressive.
Oh, he peaked. But the guy who peaked just a little bit higher was Jimmie Johnson. But really, the guy who peaked even higher than Jimmie Johnson is a guy with 200 wins, and that's Jimmie Johnson's owner, Rick Hendrick. How can you not give Rick Hendrick the Peak Performer of the Race award this time around? 200 wins. His first win came 94, Martinsville, Virginia, with Jeff Bodine, the guy on a shoestring budget. Now you look at that team, 200 banners hanging up there for all their wins. Mr. Rick Hendrick, I submit to you, is the Peak Performer of the Race.
Okay, I'll go with Rick Hendrick. I mean, the man has pretty much defined, maybe along with Jack Roush, the modern-day NASCAR owner.
He's the man behind the man, see? If Jeff Gordon was the man, and Jimmie Johnson's the man, Chad Knaus is kind of the man behind the man, always been Rick Hendrick.
Well, we should just put our hand in the hand of the man.
Well, I'm going to go do that now.
All right, for Tom Vandervoort, I'm Stephen Levine. Rick Hendrick is your Peak Performer of the Race.